Have you ever felt like your emotions were a storm you couldn't escape? Maybe it was a moment of anger that spiraled out of control, or a wave of anxiety that made it hard to breathe. We've all been there, trapped in our own inner chaos, reacting instead of responding, feeling like life is happening to us rather than through us. But what if there was a way to step back from that storm, to find calm in the center of it all? That's where the ancient wisdom of Stoicism comes in, with its powerful practice of detachment. Not the cold, indifferent kind of detachment you might imagine, but a mindful, intentional way of engaging with your emotions without being ruled by them. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, put it perfectly: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Think about that for a moment. What if the key to inner peace wasn't about changing the world around you, but mastering the way you respond to it? Stoicism teaches us that detachment isn't about shutting down or numbing out. It's about clarity. It's the ability to observe your emotions without letting them hijack your decisions. Imagine facing a difficult situation with steady hands and a clear mind, not because you don't care, but because you've learned how to care without losing yourself in the process. That's the emotional blueprint we're exploring today: practical Stoic tools to end inner chaos and reclaim your peace. This video is your guide to that transformation. We'll dive into the Stoic practices that help you detach from emotional turbulence without disconnecting from life itself. You'll learn how to pause before reacting, how to question the stories your emotions tell you, and how to cultivate a mindset that's resilient but never rigid. These aren't just philosophical ideas, they're time-tested techniques for living with more calm, confidence, and control. Whether you're dealing with stress, heartbreak, or everyday frustrations, the Stoics offer a path forward. So if you're ready to stop being pulled by every passing emotion and start standing firm in your own stillness, let's begin. Stoic detachment might sound like shutting off your feelings, but that's the opposite of what it really is. Picture a sailor in rough seas. The waves crash, the wind howls, but the sailor isn't trying to stop the storm. Instead, they adjust the sails, steady the rudder, and navigate through it. That's Stoic detachment, not ignoring the storm of emotions, but learning to sail through it with skill. The Stoics called this apatheia, a state of clarity where you feel everything deeply, but aren't enslaved by fleeting reactions. Epictetus, the philosopher born a slave, put it bluntly: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He wasn't telling us to become cold or unfeeling. He was teaching us to recognize the difference between what we can control and what we can't. Here's where modern misunderstandings creep in. Some people hear detachment and assume it means suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. But think about the last time you reacted in anger, maybe snapping at someone over a trivial mistake. In that moment, the emotion was in control, not you. Now imagine pausing, taking a breath, and choosing to respond with patience instead. That shift from reaction to response is the heart of Stoic detachment. It's not about feeling less, it's about thinking more clearly so your emotions don't dictate your actions. Consider this everyday example. You're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. Your heart races, your grip tightens on the wheel, frustration takes over. The Stoic approach: acknowledge the frustration, but then ask, can I control this traffic? If the answer is no, redirect that energy. Put on a podcast, call ahead to notify you'll be late, or simply use the time to collect your thoughts. The emotion isn't erased, it's just no longer the driver. That's the power of detachment, reclaiming your agency even when circumstances are beyond your control. So here's a question to sit with: when was the last time your emotions steered you off course? Maybe it was a heated argument where words spilled out faster than you could weigh them, or a moment of envy that clouded your judgment. The Stoics would say those moments aren't failures, they're opportunities. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you question whether your emotion matches the reality of the situation, you're practicing detachment. And with each small choice, you're building emotional resilience, not walls, because true strength isn't about bottling up feelings. It's about holding them lightly enough to see clearly and wisely enough to act with intention. This is the paradox at the core of Stoicism. By detaching from the chaos of our immediate reactions, we actually connect more deeply with what matters. We stop being passengers to our emotions and start becoming the captains of our minds. And that's where real freedom begins. At the heart of Stoic detachment lies a simple but profound question: what's truly yours to control? The ancient teacher Epictetus drew a line in the sand, one that separates the chaos of life into two categories: what's within our power and what isn't. He called it the dichotomy of control. Your thoughts, your actions, your responses, these are yours to command. The weather, other people's opinions, traffic jams, even the past. Those belong to the realm of the uncontrollable. And here's the liberating truth: inner peace begins when you stop trying to control what was never yours to begin with. Seneca, another Stoic giant, put it this way: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about that. How much mental energy do we waste wrestling with things we can't change? A coworker takes credit for your idea, a flight gets cancelled, a stranger cuts you off in traffic. These moments sting, but the real suffering comes when we replay them endlessly in our minds, demanding that reality bend to our will. The Stoic remedy: a radical acceptance. Not passive resignation, but a conscious choice to focus your energy where it actually makes a difference. Picture this: you've spent weeks preparing a presentation for your team, only for your manager to dismiss it in front of everyone. The heat rises in your cheeks, your pulse quickens, your first instinct might be to lash out or spiral into self-doubt. But what if instead you paused and applied the dichotomy of control? Can I change my manager's reaction? No. Can I refine my ideas, seek feedback, or choose how I let this affect my confidence? Absolutely. The situation hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. You've shifted from fighting the uncontrollable to investing in the actionable. Here's an experiment. Grab a sheet of paper and draw two columns. Label one, within my control, the other, beyond my control. Now, list the stressors weighing on you today. That argument with your partner, their feelings go in the second column, but your willingness to listen and reflect belongs in the first. The stock market's ups and downs, uncontrollable. How you save and spend, entirely yours. This isn't just an exercise, it's a map back to your agency. The more you practice sorting life's chaos into these categories, the lighter you'll feel. Because here's what the Stoics understood: suffering isn't just about what happens to us, it's about where we place our attention. Clinging to the uncontrollable is like trying to hold water in your fists. It drains you. But redirect that same energy toward what you can influence: your mindset, your efforts, your values, and suddenly, you're no longer at the mercy of chaos. You're the calm in its center. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, betrayals, and plagues, yet he wrote in his private journal, "The obstacle is the way." That phrase captures the essence of amor fati, the Stoic practice of loving fate. It's not about blindly accepting hardship. It's about recognizing that every challenge carries the seeds of growth. Imagine you're handed a script for your life, flaws, setbacks, and all, and instead of editing out the hard parts, you choose to love them. Why? Because those are the moments that forge resilience, creativity, and depth. Take Seneca, the Stoic philosopher exiled to Corsica by a jealous emperor. Far from crumbling, he treated exile as a laboratory for his philosophy. He wrote letters about the clarity that comes from losing everything, how stripping away comforts revealed what truly mattered. Exile is an opportunity to discover new things, he said, turning barren rocks into a classroom. That's amor fati in action, not pretending adversity feels good, but trusting it has something to teach. Now think about your own life. When a project falls apart or a relationship ends, the instinct is to resist, to rage against the unfairness. But what if you paused and asked, how could this be serving me? Maybe that failed job interview redirects you to a path better aligned with your strengths. Maybe heartbreak teaches you boundaries you'll need for future love. The Stoics didn't see fate as a cruel master, but as a wise teacher. The key is to shift from, why is this happening to me, to, what is this trying to show me? Here's a practical way to start. Reflect on a recent setback, a rejection, a mistake, a disappointment. Write down 3 ways it might be shaping you for the better. Maybe patience, maybe humility, maybe the courage to try something new. This isn't toxic positivity, it's strategic reframing. You're not denying the pain, you're mining it for meaning. Because here's the truth, life will hand you storms. Amor fati doesn't calm the storm. It teaches you to dance in the rain. When you stop fighting reality and start learning from it, you transform obstacles into stepping stones. And that's how chaos becomes curriculum. Imagine setting sail on a voyage where, instead of dreading storms, you've already mapped every possible tempest, knowing exactly how to adjust your sails when they hit. That's the power of premeditatio malorum, the Stoic practice of anticipating obstacles before they arise. Seneca, the philosopher who weathered political exile and Nero's tyranny, swore by this mental rehearsal. He'd sit in quiet reflection, envisioning the worst-case scenarios: loss, betrayal, even death, not to dwell in fear, but to disarm it. His logic was razor-sharp. By confronting hardships in his mind first, he stripped them of their power to shock him in reality. Think about how anxiety works. It's often the unexpectedness of a problem that paralyzes us: the sudden job loss, the the blue breakup. But what if you'd already walked through those possibilities in your imagination? Seneca's practice isn't about pessimism, it's about inoculation. Just as a sailor studies storm patterns before leaving port, you're preparing your mind to face life's squalls with steady hands. When you've already reckoned with a fear, it loses its edge. The Stoics called this the pre-rehearsal of troubles, and modern psychology echoes it. Studies show that visualizing challenges reduces their emotional impact when they actually happen. Here's how it works in practice. Suppose you're terrified of public speaking. Instead of avoiding it, you'd sit quietly and envision every disaster, your voice shaking, the audience bored, even outright ridicule. But here's the twist, you don't stop there. You then visualize yourself adapting. Maybe you pause, take a breath, and continue. Maybe you laugh off a mistake. By mentally navigating the worst, you build a toolkit of responses. When the moment comes, your brain recognizes it. I've been here before. I know how to handle this. Now let's tie this back to sailing. A seasoned captain doesn't hope storms won't come. They prepare for them. They check the rigging, plot alternate routes, and keep emergency supplies ready. When the winds howl, they're not caught off guard, they're executing a plan. That's premeditatio malorum, making peace with chaos by rehearsing your resilience. The storm might still rock the boat, but it won't sink you. So here's a challenge for you. What's one fear clinging to the edges of your mind? Maybe it's a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or a career risk that keeps you up at night. Try Seneca's exercise. Close your eyes and walk through the worst-case scenario, not to catastrophize but to strategize. ask yourself, if this happens, how will I respond? What tools do I already have? You'll often find that the shadow of the fear is darker than the thing itself, and once you've shone a light on it, you'll realize you're not at the mercy of the storm. You're the one holding the compass. Marcus Aurelius often lay awake at night staring at the stars, not just as a ruler, but as a student of the universe. He'd imagine Earth from space, a tiny speck in the vastness, and all his imperial problems shrinking to microscopic size. He called this practice the view from above, a cosmic zoom out to put human struggles in perspective. In his private writings, he marveled at how quickly even the grandest empires fade, how all that exists is soon forgotten. What felt urgent in the moment, a senator's insult, a battle's outcome, looked fleeting when held against the backdrop of eternity. This wasn't nihilism, it was liberation. By remembering how small his worries were in the grand scheme, he could face them with calm clarity rather than suffocating dread. Fast forward 2,000 years and modern science echoes this ancient wisdom. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a profound shift in awareness when seeing Earth from orbit. Borders vanish, conflicts seem petty, and what truly matters comes into sharp focus. Mindfulness practices tap into a similar principle, creating mental space between you and your reactions. The Stoics didn't have space stations, but they understood this psychological truth. Distance changes everything. When you're drowning in a problem, it feels like the whole ocean. But rise above it, even for a moment, and you realize it's just a wave. Here's how to apply this today. Take a stressor consuming you, a work conflict, a financial strain, a personal regret. Now imagine yourself 10 years in the future looking back. How much will this truly matter? Will it have shaped your life, or will it be a footnote you barely remember? The argument that kept you up last night, the criticism that stung, time has a way of sanding down their edges. This exercise isn't about dismissing your feelings, it's about granting yourself permission to exhale. The problem might still need solving, but the panic around it softens when you see it as temporary. Consider the last time you stumbled upon an old journal or text message. That crisis you scrawled in all caps, it probably now reads like a minor bump in the road. The Stoics would say, why wait for time to give you that clarity when you can borrow it now? The view from above is a time machine for your perspective, one that lets you fast forward to the peace of hindsight without losing a single day. So tonight, try Marcus' ritual. Step outside, look up at the stars and ask, what would the universe whisper to me about this worry? You might find that the weight you've been carrying isn't yours to bear after all. The sky has a way of reminding us we're small, and that's okay. Our storms are fleeting, and in the vastness there's always room to breathe. Marcus Aurelius never intended his journal to be read by the world. The private pages we now call meditations were his midnight conversations with himself, raw, unfiltered reflections from a man shouldering the weight of an empire. That's the first lesson of Stoic journaling. It's not about crafting pretty prose for an audience. It's about excavating your own mind with honesty. Picture the emperor by candlelight, quill in hand, dissecting his day with surgical precision. Where did I act against my values? Where did fear distort my choices? His words weren't self-punishment, they were course corrections. And that's the gift we can all claim, not the wisdom of a philosopher king, but the discipline to interrogate our own lives with that same fearless clarity. Your journal doesn't need eloquence, it needs candor. Start with these prompts borrowed from the Stoics' toolkit. What emotion ruled me today, and was it justified? Did I confuse what's urgent with what's important? Where did I resist reality instead of learning from it? These aren't just questions, they're mirrors. When you write, my coworker's comment made me furious, pause. Ask, was the anger about their words or my own insecurity? That's the pivot from reaction to understanding. The goal isn't to judge yourself, but to spot patterns. Like a scientist observing their own experiment, you're gathering data to refine tomorrow's choices. Timing matters. The Stoics favored evenings for this practice, not just because Rome's emperors had busy days, but because nightfall brings a natural quiet. The chaos of the day has settled, the distractions are muted. Try this 10 minutes before bed. Open a notebook or your notes app and answer 3 questions. First, what small victory did I claim over my impulses today? Maybe you bit back a sarcastic remark or chose patience in a long line. Celebrate that. Next, what illusion did I believe? We all fall for mental traps assuming someone's tone was disdain or that a setback was permanent. Name it. Finally, what's one thing I'll release before sleep? Grudges, regrets, tomorrow's anxieties, write them down. Then mentally place them in a box labeled "Not Tonight." Here's why this works. Neuroscientists call it the zygonic effect. Unfinished thoughts loop in our minds until we process them. Journaling is your brain's completion ritual. When Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind," this was his method, transferring swirling thoughts onto parchment to drain their emotional charge. Your version might look like bullet points or voice memos. Format doesn't matter, consistency does. Even 3 sentences a day builds what the Stoics called prosouch, attention to your inner world. So tonight, before you reach for your phone or Netflix, steal a page from the Emperor's playbook. Light a candle if it helps. Ask yourself, if today were my last, what would I want to have understood? Then write until the answer comes. Not for history's sake, but for yours, because the unexamined life isn't just unlivable, it's exhausting. And you, like Marcus, deserve the relief of seeing yourself clearly. Imagine standing on a bridge, watching a river rush beneath you. The water swirls, crashes against rocks, carries leaves along, but you're not in the river. You're observing it. That's the essence of cognitive distancing, the Stoic practice of stepping back from your emotions to see them as passing phenomena, not facts that define you. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, put it this way: it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. In other words, the traffic jam isn't the problem, it's your belief that it's ruining your day that stirs the frustration. Here's how this works in practice. Picture yourself stuck in that traffic jam. Your chest tightens, your fingers drum the wheel, classic stress signals. Now, imagine narrating the scene as if you're a neutral observer. There's a sensation of heat in my face. My thoughts are saying, this is unbearable. That tiny shift, labeling the emotion instead of becoming it, creates space between you and the reaction. Psychologists call this metacognition, but the Stoics knew it centuries ago. When you name the storm, you're no longer drowning in it. Epictetus drilled this distinction with his students. He'd say, you cry because your ship sank, but is it the sinking that hurts you, or your belief that you've been wronged by the sea? Modern research confirms this. Studies show that simply adding the phrase, "I'm having the thought that," before an emotional reaction, "I'm having the thought that my boss dislikes me," reduces its grip. You're not denying the feeling, you're seeing it as one thread in your mental tapestry, not the whole pattern. So here's your challenge. Next time anger or anxiety flares, pause and dissect it like a scientist. Ask, what's the raw fact here and what's my interpretation? Maybe the fact is, my friend didn't text back. Your interpretation, they're ignoring me because I said something wrong. See how the second layer, the story you've added, is where the suffering lies. The Stoic move is to spot that gap. It's not about suppressing the emotion. It's about untangling the event from the drama we wrap around it. Think of cognitive distancing like adjusting a camera lens. When you're zoomed in, a single blotch consumes the frame. a rude comment feels like a personal catastrophe. But zoom out, and it's one pixel in a vast landscape. This isn't indifference, it's clarity. The traffic jam didn't change, your relationship to it did. And that's the secret. When you stop conflating what happens with what it means, you reclaim the power to choose your response. The storm might still rage, but you've built an observation deck above it. The Stoics had a radical idea about desire. They believed the key to happiness wasn't getting more, but wanting less. Musonius Rufus, the teacher who shaped Epictetus, put it bluntly: the more you crave, the poorer you become. He wasn't talking about money. He meant that every unchecked desire is a chain, turning you into a beggar for things you don't even truly need. Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone, bombarded by ads for the latest gadget, the trendiest shoes, the perfect vacation. Each swipe stirs a quiet hunger. What if I had that? But here's the paradox Stoicism reveals. The more you feed those cravings, the emptier you feel. Consumerism tells us fulfillment lives in the next purchase. Stoicism whispers, it was inside you all along. Think about how desire operates in your life. That itch to upgrade your phone even when the old one works fine. The restless envy when a friend lands a promotion. The gnawing sense that you're almost happy if only you had X, Y, or Z. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, and it's not about deprivation, it's about discernment. Imagine holding a handful of sand, clench your fist tightly, and most of it spills through your fingers. Open your palm gently, and what remains is exactly what you need. That's the art of moderated desire, knowing what to hold lightly and what to let go of completely. Consider the modern myth of "I'll be happy when I get the raise, when I find the partner, when I lose the weight." Stoicism dismantles this illusion by asking, why not now? Contentment isn't a destination, it's a way of traveling. The ancient Stoics lived this. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, routinely practiced poverty, wearing rough clothes, eating simple meals, not as a punishment but as a reminder, I am not my possessions. He knew luxury could become a cage if he forgot how to live without it. Here's a question to sit with. What desire, if released, would free you? Maybe it's the longing for constant approval, the pressure to keep up with peers, or the fantasy of a perfect life untouched by struggle. Picture cutting that single thread. How much lighter would you feel? The Stoics weren't against ambition or enjoyment. They were against slavery to impulses that leave you perpetually dissatisfied. A well-trained desire isn't numb, it's selective. It says no to frivolous cravings so it can say yes to what truly nourishes: deep relationships, meaningful work, inner peace. Consumer culture thrives on manufactured discontent. Stoicism offers an antidote: the realization that you already hold the keys to your own fulfillment. Not in the next purchase, but in the next breath. Not in what you lack, but in what you choose to notice. When you stop chasing the horizon, you might find the ground beneath your feet was always enough. Picture waking up tomorrow to find your most treasured possession gone: your home, your health, even a loved one. The stomach-dropping terror of that thought is exactly where the Stoics begin their most counterintuitive practice: negative visualization. Seneca, the philosopher who tutored Nero, urged his students to rehearse poverty by mentally stripping away comforts, not to dwell in dread, but to awaken to the startling truth that everything we love is on loan from fate. He wrote letters reminding friends that their wealth, status, and even children were temporary leases, not eternal guarantees. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, but its real gift isn't fear. It's wonder. By imagining loss, we rediscover presence. Consider your phone. You use it dozens of times a day without a second thought. Now imagine it smashed beyond repair. For a moment, you'd feel that pang: no messages, no maps, no camera. But then what? You'd adapt. You'd borrow a friend's device, dig out an old notebook, rediscover the library. The inconvenience would fade, but the lesson might stick. That little rectangle wasn't a necessity. It was a convenience you'd inflated into a lifeline. Negative visualization punctures that illusion. It asks, what if this vanished, not to torment you, but to reveal how much you've taken for granted? Here's why this works. Neuroscientists call it hedonic adaptation. We acclimate to blessings until they feel like entitlements. The first sip of morning coffee is a ritual. By the 10th day, it's routine. Negative visualization jolts us out of that trance. When Seneca pictured losing his villas, his books, even his own life, he wasn't practicing pessimism. He was inoculating himself against entitlement. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life, he wrote. Let us postpone nothing. That urgency, knowing time is borrowed, is what turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. Try this tonight. Before sleep, pick one mundane blessing: your bed, your eyesight, the laughter of someone you love. Close your eyes and pretend it's vanished. Sit with that hollow feeling for just 10 seconds. Then open your eyes. Notice how the ordinary suddenly gleams with rarity. That's the alchemy of negative visualization. It transmutes taking for granted into awe. So here's a question to carry with you today. What's one thing you'd ache to lose but could ultimately survive without? Your morning coffee, your favorite jacket, the ability to walk. Sit with that tension between longing and resilience, and you'll touch the stoic heart of gratitude. Not the shallow kind that posts #blessed, but the profound kind that knows every breath is a reprieve. Because here's the secret Seneca uncovered. When you stop assuming permanence, you start tasting eternity in the temporary. Seneca called anger a brief madness, a fire that burns the hand of the one who wields it. In his essay on anger, he paints a chilling portrait of this emotion, how it clouds judgment, twists reality, and leaves us weaker than the very thing we're fighting against. But here's where Stoicism offers a lifeline. Anger isn't an inevitable eruption. It's a choice we unknowingly rehearse. Seneca's remedy, a pause so deliberate it becomes revolutionary. Not counting to 10, but asking 2 questions. Is this worth my dignity, and will my reaction restore what was lost? Picture this. You've just received an email from a colleague publicly undermining your work. Your fingers fly across the keyboard, drafting a scathing reply. The stoic move: close the laptop, walk outside, breathe until the pounding in your chest slows. Now ask, what story am I telling myself about this email? Maybe you've jumped to, they're trying to sabotage me, when the truth is closer to, they're insecure and lashing out. Anger thrives on narratives. Your power lies in rewriting them. History gives us a masterclass in this. When the Roman Emperor Caligula publicly humiliated Seneca by mocking his speech impediment, Seneca didn't rage or grovel. He later wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That pause between provocation and response is where character is forged. Modern neuroscience confirms this. The amygdala, our brain's alarm system, needs just 90 seconds to reset after a trigger. Storm clouds pass if we don't chase them. So here's your reframing technique. Next time anger flares, treat it like a pop-up notification. Don't click immediately. Ask, what's the hidden cost of this anger? Maybe it's the sleepless night after an argument, the regret over harsh words, the opportunity lost because you were too busy seething. One executive told me she nearly derailed a promotion by snapping at a mentor over trivial feedback. The insult forgotten in a week, the reputation damage. Lasted years. Stoicism doesn't ask you to never feel anger. It teaches you to interrogate it. Like a suspicious customs agent, you get to demand, what are you really carrying? Often beneath the fury, you'll find fear of being disrespected, of losing control, of being exposed as inadequate. Address that, and the anger loses its fangs. Try this today. Recall a moment when anger hijacked you. Replay it with Seneca's questions. Was this worth my peace? Did my reaction align with who I aspire to be? The answers aren't about guilt. They're blueprints for your next battle with frustration. Because here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered. The less you feed anger, the more space you create for what actually heals: clarity, agency, and the quiet strength of choosing your storms. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a whispered reminder to himself: you could leave life right now, not as a morbid fixation, but as a clarion call to presence. He called it Memento Mori, the art of remembering death to sharpen life. This wasn't about fear, it was about focus. Picture waking up and truly grasping that today isn't a rehearsal. That meeting you've been dreading, that conversation you've postponed, that creative project simmering in the back of your mind, what if this were your last chance to act? The Stoics believed that death isn't life's opposite, but its compass. When you hold the finite nature of time in your hands like an hourglass, the grains suddenly become too precious to waste on pettiness or procrastination. Now contrast this with how most of us live today. We tuck mortality away in hospitals and euphemisms: passed away, no longer with us. We scroll through endless feeds, binge-watch distractions, and treat time as if it's a renewable resource. Psychologists call this death denial, and it comes at a cost. When we avoid acknowledging life's brevity, we dilute its intensity. The Stoics would say we're not avoiding death, we're avoiding the urgency it could inspire. Think of it like this: if you knew a storm was coming, you wouldn't spend hours rearranging your sock drawer. You'd secure what matters. Memento Mori is that storm warning for the soul, a nudge to stop postponing your integrity, your courage, your love. Here's the irony: embracing mortality doesn't shrink your world, it expands it. When Steve Jobs stood before Stanford's graduating class in 2005, months after his cancer diagnosis, he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." That's Memento Mori in modern dress. It's not about obsessing over the end, but letting that awareness strip away the trivial, the argument you're nursing, the dream you've sidelined, the apology you've withheld. Death whispers, "Why wait?" So here's a challenge. Tonight, borrow Marcus' ritual. Before sleep, ask yourself, if today had been my last, would I be proud of how I spent it? Not in grand gestures, but in the texture of your moments. Did you listen fully, or just wait for your turn to speak? Did you create something meaningful, or just consume what others made? The Stoics didn't view death as a threat, but as the ultimate accountability partner. It asks the only question that ever really matters: are you living in alignment with what you claim to value? Because here's the secret hidden in plain sight: you don't need more time, you need fewer excuses. The awareness of life's fragility isn't a shadow to flee from, it's the light that reveals what's worth holding onto. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start acting like today counts, and that's when everything changes. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's cruelty, turned hardship into his greatest teacher. He didn't just endure discomfort, he invited it, sleeping on a thin mat, wearing threadbare clothes, fasting until his stomach growled. These weren't punishments. They were drills for the soul. Difficulties show what men are, he told his students. When the storm comes, you don't want to be learning how to reef the sails. That's the heart of voluntary discomfort, not seeking suffering for its own sake, but choosing small battles today so you're ready for life's inevitable wars tomorrow. Think of it like strength training for your resilience. When you deliberately skip a meal, face the morning cold without hitting snooze, or walk instead of driving, you're not just saving money or time, you're proving something to yourself. I can handle this. The modern world has turned comfort into a default setting, but the Stoics knew this was dangerous. When every craving is instantly gratified, the smallest inconvenience feels like a crisis. Your Wi-Fi lags and suddenly you're furious. The coffee shop gets your order wrong and your whole morning is ruined. Voluntary discomfort breaks that cycle by rewiring your relationship with unease. Take cold showers, a practice embraced by everyone from ancient Spartans to modern Navy SEAL. That first blast of icy water triggers panic, your body screaming to escape. But here's the lesson hidden in the shivering. Discomfort peaks, then passes. 30 seconds in, your breath steadies, your mind clears, you realize you weren't in danger, just briefly uncomfortable. That revelation transfers everywhere. The next time your flight's delayed or criticism stings, you'll remember, this is just another cold shower. I've trained for this. Now let's move beyond the physical. Epictetus urged his students to practice poverty not by abandoning their homes, but by periodically living as if they had less. Wear your oldest clothes for a week, turn off notifications for a day, eat simple meals without distraction. These aren't tests of willpower, they're audits of dependency. When you voluntarily give up a comfort, you expose the hidden beliefs clinging to it. I need this to be happy. I can't function without that. Spoiler, you can. The comfort wasn't holding you up, it was holding you back. Here's the challenge hiding in plain sight. Comfort is a cage with golden bars. We cling to routines, devices, and conveniences not because they serve us, but because we fear who we'd be without them. But what if the opposite is true? What if shedding those crutches reveals strength you forgot you had? So ask yourself today, what's one comfort you've never questioned? Maybe it's the afternoon snack you eat out of habit, not hunger. The constant background noise of podcasts because silence feels unnerving. The reflex to check your phone during any idle moment. Pick one and let it go just for a day, not as a punishment but as an exploration. Because here's the secret Epictetus knew: voluntary discomfort isn't about toughness. It's about freedom. When you stop fearing minor hardships, you stop being hostage to circumstance. The traffic jam becomes extra thinking time. The delayed meal sharpens your appreciation for food. The broken phone, a chance to remember life existed before screens. Every comfort you can willingly set aside is a chain you've broken. And in that space between I need and I choose, you'll find something rare and powerful. The unshakable calm of knowing nothing outside you can dictate your peace. Epictetus described the mind as having a gatekeeper, a space between what happens to us and how we respond. He wrote, "Don't let the force of an impression sweep you off your feet. Say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent." That tiny gap, that breath before reaction, is where Stoic freedom lives. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about creating just enough distance to ask, does this deserve my energy? Picture this: your child spills juice across the floor you just cleaned. Your jaw clenches, heat rises, the scolding words are already forming. But what if instead of erupting, you inhaled deeply? That breath isn't passivity, it's power. In the space of that pause, you might notice the fear behind your anger, the exhaustion of feeling unseen, the frustration of repeating yourself. And suddenly, the spilled juice isn't a crisis, it's a chance to model grace. You kneel down, hand them a towel, and say, let's fix this together. The mess gets cleaned either way, but one response leaves dignity intact, yours and theirs. Modern neuroscience backs this ancient wisdom. Studies show that even a 2-second pause disrupts the amygdala's panic cycle, creating room for the prefrontal cortex, your brain's wiser, slower voice, to weigh in. Think of it like a buffer on a streaming video. Without it, every glitch ruins the experience. With it, minor hiccups smooth out before they disrupt the flow. The Stoic pause works the same way. It's not about eliminating reactions, it's about preventing emotional buffering. So here's your challenge. Pick one recurring trigger, maybe your partner's habit of leaving dishes by the sink, or the colleague who interrupts you in meetings. For the next week, when that trigger fires, practice Epictetus' gatekeeper move. Freeze mid-reaction and whisper to yourself, "Who are you? Is this annoyance really about the dishes, or the fear your efforts go unnoticed? Is the interruption a personal slight, or just someone eager to contribute?" That moment of interrogation changes everything, because when you stop conflating triggers with threats, you reclaim the right to respond, not just react. The pause isn't weakness, it's the ultimate assertion of sovereignty over your inner world. And like any skill, it grows stronger with use. Start small. One breath, one question. Watch how a single moment of space can turn a storm into a choice. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private journal, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." 2,000 years later, that paradox still stings. How many hours have we wasted tailoring our lives to fit someone else's applause? Scrolling through social media, editing our words for likes, measuring our worth by follower counts. It's ancient insecurity in modern packaging. The Stoics saw this trap clearly. When you outsource your self-assessment to others, you hand them the keys to your peace. Consider the modern obsession with engagement metrics. A post goes viral and suddenly we feel validated. Another falls flat and we question our value. But here's what Marcus would ask: does a tree wither when no one praises its shade? External validation is like drinking salt water. The more you crave it, the thirstier you become. The Stoic alternative: become your own benchmark, not in a narcissistic way, but with the quiet confidence of someone who's defined their own criteria for success. Social media didn't invent this struggle, it just amplified it. In ancient Rome, senators jostled for the crowd's cheers in the forum, just as we chase notifications today. Marcus, despite his imperial power, wrote reminders to himself: "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Not for the statues or the history books, but because integrity was its own reward." He knew no amount of external applause could fill the hollowness of self-betrayal. Now, let's get practical. Grab a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. In the first, list the people whose approval you instinctively seek: your boss, an ex, maybe even strangers online. In the second, note what their validation costs you: the hours spent rehearsing conversations, the outfits chosen to impress, the ideas left unshared for fear of judgment. See the toll. That's the price of letting others hold your compass. The Stoic solution isn't indifference, it's selective attention. As Epictetus put it, if someone handed your body to a passerby, you'd be outraged. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who insults you, allowing it to be troubled and confused. Here's the turning point. Next time you feel that familiar tug, the itch to check likes, the anxiety before a performance review, pause. Ask whose voice is whispering this fear. Often, you'll trace it back to an old wound, a critical parent, a childhood bully, a past failure. That's the ghost you're still trying to appease. But Marcus offers a liberating reframe. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. The opinion was always just air vibrating in someone else's throat. You're the one who gave it weight. This isn't about rejecting feedback or living in isolation. It's about anchoring your worth in something sturdier than the fickle tides of others' moods. Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't chase the waves or beg the storm for approval. It stands firm, radiating light by its own measure. That's the Stoic ideal, not needing validation, but earning your own respect so thoroughly that external noise fades to background static. So tonight, try Marcus' exercise. Light a candle, look in the mirror, and ask, if every opinion but mine vanished tomorrow, who would I choose to be? The answer might surprise you. Beneath all those borrowed expectations, there's a version of you that's been waiting, unshaken by praise, unfazed by scorn, finally free. A surgeon's hands don't shake not because they lack feeling, but because they've mastered the art of steady focus amid life and death stakes. That's equanimity, the Stoic superpower of remaining unshaken by chaos without becoming indifferent to it. Epictetus, who endured slavery and exile, called it the virtue of keeping your head when all about you are losing theirs. Notice he didn't say not to feel the storm. He said to anchor yourself so deeply that the storm can't knock you over. Think of the last time pressure derailed you. Maybe it was a high-stakes work presentation where your voice trembled, or a family conflict where emotions spiraled out of control. Now picture the alternative, facing that same moment with the calm precision of that surgeon, not suppressing your nerves but channeling them into clarity. The Stoics believed this wasn't innate talent, it was trained resilience. Like a sailor learning to read the winds, you can cultivate the ability to navigate turbulence without capsizing. Here's how it works in practice. Imagine two chess players. One sweats over every move, agonizing about losing. The other studies the board with quiet intensity, seeing setbacks as puzzles rather than catastrophes. Both feel the weight of the game, but only one lets it distort their judgment. That's the difference between reacting and responding. The Stoic goal isn't to eliminate emotional waves, it's to build a boat sturdy enough to ride them. So where does this steadiness come from? Epictetus points to our judgments. It's not events that disturb people, he said, but their interpretations of them. When your flight gets cancelled, you can rage at the universe or recalibrate, use the delay to read, call a friend, or simply watch the clouds. The inconvenience remains, but your suffering becomes optional. Equanimity is the space between what happens and the story you tell yourself about it. Consider firefighters rushing into a burning building. Their training doesn't erase fear, it transforms it into focused action. They feel the heat but don't freeze because they've rehearsed staying steady when everything screams to panic. That's the Stoic secret. Equanimity isn't the absence of emotion, but the presence of discipline. You don't wait for chaos to strike to build this skill. You drill it daily, in small moments, choosing patience in traffic, grace under criticism, or humor when plans unravel. Now turn the lens inward. Where in your life does turbulence most often throw you off balance? Is it the unpredictability of parenting, the volatility of financial markets, or the whirlwind of social dynamics? Identify that hotspot and you've found your training ground. Start small. Next time your toddler spills milk or your inbox floods, pause, breathe, ask, what part of this can I actually influence? The more you practice this pivot from helplessness to agency, the more natural it becomes, because here's the truth equanimity reveals. Chaos doesn't create your reactions, it exposes them. The storm doesn't make the boat weak, it shows where the hull needs reinforcing. And every time you choose steadiness over reactivity, you're not just surviving the storm. You're becoming the calm within it. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a line in his private journal that would echo through centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, it sounds like a paradox. How can a roadblock also be the path? But the Stoics weren't trading in riddles. They were revealing a radical truth about human potential. Every obstacle, every setback, every no carries hidden energy if you know how to harness it. Take the story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. Fresh out of college, she faced rejection after rejection, failed law school exams. Doors slammed in her face as a door-to-door salesperson. Even ridicule when she first sketched her idea for footless pantyhose on a napkin. But here's where the Stoic mindset kicked in. Instead of internalizing those no's as proof she wasn't cut out for success, she treated them as data points. Each rejection became a clue. This pitch isn't working. This fabric isn't right. This buyer needs a different approach. The very resistance that would have crushed others became her refining fire. By the time she convinced a manufacturer to take a chance on her prototype, she'd turned every no into a stepping stone. A decade later, she was the youngest self-made female billionaire in history, not despite the obstacles, but because she'd learned to wield them like tools. What makes this Stoic principle so electrifying is its defiance of conventional wisdom. Most of us see hurdles as stop signs. The Stoics see them as detour signs, redirecting us toward ingenuity we wouldn't have discovered otherwise. When a storm forces a ship to change course, it might stumble upon uncharted islands rich with resources. Marcus Aurelius knew this firsthand. As emperor, he faced barbarian invasions, political betrayals, even a devastating plague. Yet his journals reveal a man who treated each crisis as raw material for growth. The plague, a reminder to value connection; betrayals, lessons in discernment. Even his own chronic illnesses became teachers of patience and perspective. Now, bring this home. Look at the obstacle looming largest in your life right now. The rejected proposal, the financial strain, the skill gap holding you back. What if, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you asked, "How could this be happening for me?" Maybe that career setback is pushing you toward a path better aligned with your values. Maybe the criticism you're bristling at contains a kernel of truth you needed to hear. Even physical limitations can force creativity. Think of Beethoven composing his greatest symphonies after going deaf, or Frida Kahlo turning bedridden pain into visceral art. Here's the litmus test the Stoics used. Does this obstacle block my path, or is it showing me a new one? The answer changes everything. Because when you stop resisting reality and start collaborating with it, you unlock a hidden superpower, the ability to alchemize frustration into fuel. So tonight, grab a sheet of paper, write down one current challenge, then beneath it, list 3 ways it might be secretly serving you, not as toxic positivity, but as strategic reframing. You might just find the thing you've been cursing is actually the mentor you didn't know you needed. The real magic isn't in avoiding obstacles. It's in recognizing they were never roadblocks to begin with, just unmarked trailheads pointing toward versions of yourself you've yet to meet. Somewhere along the way, Stoicism got mislabeled as emotional ice, a philosophy that turns people into unfeeling statues. But nothing could be further from the truth. Ancient Stoics like Hierocles practiced something far more nuanced: compassionate detachment. Picture a doctor in an emergency room, steady hands stitching a wound, fully present yet not overwhelmed by the patient's pain. That's the balance Stoicism teaches, caring deeply without being consumed. Hierocles visualized this through his famous circles of concern rings, radiating outward from self to family, community, and ultimately all humanity. The goal wasn't to build walls between these circles, but to stretch your compassion wider while keeping your center grounded. Think about the last time someone dumped their stress onto you. Maybe a friend vented for an hour about their toxic boss, and afterward you felt drained, carrying their frustration like a second-hand coat. Hierocles would say you stepped into their circle without maintaining your own footing. True Stoic compassion means holding space for others' struggles without letting their chaos become your bloodstream. It's the difference between saying, "I hear how hard this is for you," and losing sleep over problems you can't solve. The Stoics called this sympatheia, a shared feeling that doesn't require self-sacrifice. Here's how it works in practice. When your partner comes home seething about a work conflict, your instinct might be to mirror their anger or rush to fix it. The Stoic approach: listen fully, eyes meeting theirs, phone set aside, but mentally place their emotion in its own container. You might say, "That sounds exhausting. What do you need right now?" Instead of, "I can't believe they did that, let's draft a complaint." One response fuels the fire, the other offers water without drinking the smoke. This isn't emotional suppression, it's emotional clarity. Imagine two people in a rowboat. One starts rocking wildly. If you join the frenzy, you both capsize. But if you stay balanced, you can steady the boat for both. The Stoics recognized a profound truth: you can't pour from an empty cup. Even the most selfless caregivers, nurses, therapists, parents must occasionally step back to replenish their reserves. So here's a question to sit with today. Where in your life are you confusing attachment with love? Are you carrying someone else's burden to the point of resentment? Are you mistaking anxiety for devotion? Try Hierarchal's exercise. Sketch your circles, your needs at the center, then loved ones, colleagues, strangers. Notice where the boundaries blur. Compassion isn't about burning yourself to keep others warm. It's about tending your flame so you can light their way without disappearing into the dark. Because here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered: true detachment doesn't shrink your heart. It expands your capacity to hold others without losing yourself. Like a lighthouse standing firm in the storm, you become someone others can navigate by, not another ship tossed in the waves. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason: to listen twice as much as we speak." That simple observation cuts through the noise of our modern world, where everyone seems to be shouting to be heard. But the Stoics understood something profound. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a space where wisdom grows. Think about the last heated argument you witnessed, maybe online, maybe at the dinner table. What was more striking, the words hurled back and forth, or the rare moment when someone paused, truly listened, and responded with measured thought? That's the power of silence in action, not as surrender, but as strategy. Consider how differently conflicts unfold when one person chooses to stop reacting and starts absorbing. Picture a coworker criticizing your idea in a meeting. The instinct might be to interrupt, defend, or counterattack. But what if instead you let their words land? Not to concede, but to understand. In that silence, something remarkable happens. You separate the message from the emotion. You might discover their critique hides a valid concern, or that their frustration isn't about you at all. The Stoics called this prosouch attention so deliberate it becomes transformative. By listening first, you gain the clarity to respond rather than react. History offers a masterclass in this. When the Roman senator Cato was heckled in the forum, he'd often stand motionless, letting the insults hang in the air. The crowd would grow restless, then quiet, until the silence itself exposed the emptiness of the attacks. His restraint wasn't weakness, it was a mirror forcing others to confront their own chaos. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that pauses in conversation deepen trust, while rapid-fire arguments escalate tension. Silence, it turns out, is the ultimate disarming mechanism. Now, reflect on your own life. When has saying nothing been your wisest choice? Maybe it was biting your tongue when a loved one lashed out in pain, recognizing their words came from a place of hurt. Or perhaps it was resisting the urge to correct someone publicly, realizing the momentary victory wasn't worth the lasting rift. These aren't moments of passivity, they're demonstrations of emotional discipline. The Stoics didn't advocate silence to suppress voices, but to elevate them. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you listen more, your understanding expands. Here's the challenge hidden in Zeno's wisdom. Silence isn't just about holding back words, it's about creating space for better ones. Next time you're tempted to fill the air with noise, ask, is this necessary? Is it kind? Does it improve upon the quiet? You might find that the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And in that stillness, you'll hear something rare, the sound of your own wisdom. The sun hasn't yet risen, but Marcus Aurelius is already awake, candlelight flickering across the pages of his journal. He begins the day not with frantic scrolling or rushed coffee, but with a deliberate question: what kind of person do I want to be today? This wasn't just a morning ritual, it was a mental armor forged before the battles of the day could begin. The Stoics didn't leave their mindset to chance. They crafted it at dawn and refined it at dusk like blacksmiths tempering steel. Seneca called this daily practice securum judicium, the examined life. He wrote, "Putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes, denying us the present by promising the future." His solution: bookend your days with intention, using the quiet hours to steer your soul before the world tries to take the wheel. Let's start with the morning. Picture this: instead of reaching for your phone, you reach for clarity. The Stoic morning ritual wasn't about affirmations in the modern sense, empty mantras like "I am enough." It was about grounding yourself in reality. Epictetus advised his students to begin by naming the challenges they'd likely face. Today I'll meet interference, ingratitude, insolence. Not to dwell in negativity, but to disarm it. By anticipating friction, you remove its power to surprise. Then the pivot: how will I meet these challenges? With patience, with humor, with the quiet confidence of someone who's rehearsed their principles. Try this tomorrow. Before your feet hit the floor, whisper one Stoic reminder to yourself, maybe Marcus, "The obstacle is the way," or Epictetus, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." These aren't platitudes, they're psychological armor. Now, the evening where Seneca's wisdom shines brightest. He ended each day with what he called an accounting, a practice borrowed from merchants tallying their ledgers. But instead of coins, he counted virtues. "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent," he wrote, "I examine my entire day and measure my words and deeds." Imagine doing this tonight, not a shallow "how was your day," but a forensic audit of your choices. Where did I act with courage? Where did fear dictate my actions? Did I confuse busyness with purpose? The goal isn't self-flagellation, it's course correction. Think of it like a surgeon debriefing after a surgery. What worked, what didn't, how to improve. This nightly review is where growth crystallizes. Here's your challenge: design a 5-minute Stoic ritual that bridges morning and evening. Maybe it's 2 minutes at dawn to set an intention today. I'll respond, not react. And 3 minutes at night to reflect on where you succeeded or strayed. Keep it simple: a notebook by your bed, a voice memo on your commute, even a few mindful breaths while waiting for your coffee to brew. The format doesn't matter, the consistency does. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew: transformation doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in the small, daily returning to yourself, like a sailor constantly adjusting the sails to stay true north. Consider the alternative. Without these bookends, days blur into weeks and weeks into years. We become passive passengers to our impulses, reacting to whatever the world throws at us. But with even 5 minutes of Stoic ritual, you reclaim authorship of your life. You're no longer just weathering storms, you're learning to navigate by the stars. So tonight, when the world quietens, ask yourself Seneca's question: What did I teach my soul today? The answer might just change tomorrow's sunrise. Epictetus once asked his students a jarring question. When was nature ever required to be fair? The question lands like a splash of cold water because deep down, we all carry this quiet expectation that life owes us fairness. That if we work hard, we'll get the promotion. If we're kind, people will reciprocate. If we follow the rules, the universe will reward us. But here's the Stoic reality check. Fairness isn't a law of nature, it's a human invention. The rain doesn't fall because you deserve it. The storm doesn't skip your house because you're a good person. Nature operates on cause and effect, not karma. And once you internalize that, something liberating happens. You stop demanding fairness and start developing resilience. Take job promotions. You might pour your soul into a project, stay late, exceed targets only to watch someone less qualified get the role because they're the boss's nephew. The outrage burns, doesn't it? But Epictetus would ask, who promised you that merit alone would dictate outcomes? The unfairness stings because we've confused how things should be with how things are. Stoicism doesn't tell you to like the unfairness. It teaches you to see it clearly, like a sailor spotting a reef ahead. You can't wish the reef away, but you can steer around it. This isn't cynicism, it's strategic realism. Imagine two farmers planting seeds. One believes the sky owes him sunshine because he worked hard. The other studies the soil, watches the clouds, and prepares for drought. Who's more likely to survive a bad season? The Stoics were that second farmer. They understood that railing against life's unfairness is like shaking your fist at the wind, exhausting and pointless. Better to invest that energy in what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your next move. Now turn the lens inward. What unfairness still triggers you? Maybe it's watching someone take credit for your idea, or seeing a careless driver cut you off without consequence. Notice the physical reaction, the clenched jaw, the racing pulse. That's your entitlement talking, not entitlement in the spoiled sense, but in the childish belief that the world should align with your sense of justice. The Stoic remedy, swap should for is. It's unfair that my colleague got promoted becomes my colleague got promoted. Now what? That tiny shift doesn't condone injustice. It defangs its power to derail you. History's full of people who transformed unfairness into fuel. Beethoven was going deaf, not writing symphonies despite it, but through it channeling his frustration into compositions that redefined music. Nelson Mandela turned 27 years of wrongful imprisonment into a masterclass in reconciliation. These weren't saints, they were practitioners of Stoic realism. They didn't waste energy demanding fairness from their circumstances. They invested it in their response. So here's the invitation. The next time life feels unjust, pause. Ask yourself, am I arguing with reality? Because fairness isn't something the universe dispenses, it's something we create through our actions. And the moment you stop expecting the world to play fair, you start playing smarter. Seneca opened his essay on the shortness of life with a startling claim. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. 2,000 years later, that indictment still stings. Think about how we spend our days scrolling feeds, refreshing inboxes, binging shows we don't even enjoy. We treat time as if it's infinite, then wake up one day wondering where it all went. But here's the Stoic twist. Life isn't short because the hours are few. It's short because we surrender so many of them to things that don't matter. Imagine your time as a bank account. Every morning, you're gifted 24 fresh hours, no rollovers, no second chances. How would you spend that currency if you knew the balance was dwindling? You wouldn't blow half your deposit on petty arguments or mindless distractions. Yet that's exactly what most of us do. Seneca watched wealthy Romans squander years on gossip and banquets while complaining about life's brevity. He called it busy idleness, the illusion of activity masking utter emptiness. Let's make this practical. Grab a sheet of paper and divide it into 3 columns: essential, meaningful, and trivial. Now track your next 24 hours. How many minutes go to each category? That 30-minute commute, could it become an audiobook session? The hour lost to social media, could it be a walk with someone you love? The Stoics weren't against leisure, they opposed unconscious living. Even relaxation should be chosen, not stumbled into by default. Here's the wake-up call hiding in Seneca's words: distraction isn't harmless. Every quick check of your phone, every grudging hour spent pleasing others at your own expense, every procrastinated dream is a withdrawal from your finite account. The Roman philosopher compared such people to travelers who never leave the harbor, too busy repairing their ship to ever set sail. So ask yourself today, what's your most persistent time thief? Is it the lure of notifications, the trap of perfectionism, or the weight of others' expectations? Name it, then do what Seneca advised: hold every hour in your grasp. Not by squeezing tighter, but by refusing to let petty things hijack what's precious. Because the great irony is this: when you stop wasting time, you stop feeling like there's never enough. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped Epictetus, once said, "We should seek out friends not for what they can do for us, but for who they are in their souls." That simple distinction flips modern friendship on its head. How many of our connections are built on convenience rather than character? The coworker we tolerate for networking, the childhood friend we outgrew but keep from habit, the social media followings that masquerade as community. Stoicism challenges us to ask, are these bonds lifting us toward virtue or weighing us down with compromise? Picture 2 types of friendship. The first is transactional: you help me move, I'll introduce you to my boss. These relationships have their place, but the Stoics warn against mistaking them for true companionship. Then there's the second kind, the friend who sharpens your integrity like a whetstone against steel. They don't applaud your worst impulses or soothe your excuses. They call you out when you're acting small and remind you of who you're capable of becoming. Seneca described such friends as mirrors to our souls, reflecting not just our faces but our potential. This isn't about perfectionism. Even the Stoics acknowledged human flaws, but consider the difference between a friend who occasionally stumbles yet strives upward versus one who drags you into pettiness or complacency. Imagine someone who constantly gossips, nudges you to skip commitments for trivial pleasures, or fuels your resentment toward others. Musonius would say these aren't friends, they're accomplices in stagnation. Toxic ties don't always look like dramatic betrayals. Often, they're slow leaks in your moral courage. History offers a striking example. When Cato the Younger, a Stoic paragon, was pressured to compromise his principles for political gain, his circle didn't urge pragmatism. They stood with him in defiance, even as exile or death loomed. Contrast that with the fair-weather friends who vanish when your convictions become inconvenient. The Stoic test is simple. In their presence, do you feel more or less aligned with your highest self? So here's an experiment. List 5 people you interact with most. Next to each name, note the dominant emotion they evoke: inspiration, obligation, competition, depletion, or growth. Some will energize your virtues, others may feed your vanities or fears. This isn't about cutting people off abruptly, but about consciously investing time where it nourishes your character. Because here's the paradox true friendship reveals: the relationships worth keeping aren't those that make you comfortable, they're the ones that make you better. And sometimes the most stoic act of friendship is knowing when to walk away, not from others, but from the versions of yourself they unknowingly ask you to be. Detachment often gets mistaken for indifference, as if Stoicism turns people into emotionless statues watching life from a distant balcony. But Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who led Rome through wars and plagues, wrote passionately about love, duty, and grief in his private journals. His distinction was crucial. Non-attachment isn't about not caring, it's about not clinging. Picture an athlete before a championship game. They've trained relentlessly, but as they step onto the field, they release their grip on the trophy. Not because winning doesn't matter, but because obsessing over it will tighten their muscles and cloud their focus. That's the balance, giving your all while surrendering the need to control the outcome. Marcus put it plainly, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Consider a tennis player who double faults on match point. The unskilled mind spirals, I've blown it, everyone's disappointed, my career's over. The Stoic player acknowledges the mistake, adjusts their grip, and serves again. The error isn't denied, it's just not allowed to hijack the next moment. This is the art of non-attachment, feeling the sting without letting it dictate your next move. Now contrast this with apathy. Apathy shrugs, whatever, it's just a game. Non-attachment leans in, fully sweating, striving, risking defeat, yet refuses to equate self-worth with the scoreboard. The difference: one avoids emotion, the other engages with it wisely. When Marcus faced rebellions and betrayals, he didn't suppress his concern for Rome. He channeled it into deliberate action, writing, "The cucumber is bitter, then throw it away. There are brambles in the path, then go around. That's all you need to know." No drama, no despair, just clear-eyed response. Here's where modern life tests us. That promotion you're angling for, the perfect first date you're scripting in your head, the likes on your latest post, how tightly are you gripping these outcomes? The Stoic challenge isn't to stop wanting them. It's to want them without letting them destabilize you. Imagine a musician auditioning for a symphony. If their hands shake from craving approval, the notes will falter. But if they play for the joy of the music itself, their skill shines regardless of the judge's pens. So take this question into your week. What outcome have I turned into a lifeline? Is it a number on the scale, a certain salary, or someone else's validation? Notice how that attachment feels in your body, the tension, the mental reruns of what if. Then try Marcus' move, honor the desire but loosen your grip. Plan without demanding, work without fixating, love without possessing. The irony: it's often when we release the need for a specific result that we perform at our peak. Because non-attachment isn't a lack of fire, it's the space that lets the fire burn clean. Cato the Younger, the Stoic senator who defied Julius Caesar, wasn't just a philosopher, he was a physical force. Ancient historians describe him marching barefoot through snow-covered streets, enduring scorching sun without complaint, and training his body to withstand hunger and fatigue. Why? Because Cato understood something modern science now confirms. The mind doesn't float separate from the body, it's woven into every muscle, every breath, every heartbeat. The Stoics didn't see physical discipline as vanity or masochism. They saw it as the foundation of unshakable clarity. When you master your body's impulses, you're not just building endurance, you're rehearsing the art of self-command. Picture this: it's dawn in ancient Rome. While most citizens are still asleep, Cato is already on the move, walking miles with a heavy pack, deliberately choosing discomfort. This wasn't punishment, it was preparation. By acclimating his body to hardship, he was conditioning his mind to face political betrayals and moral crises with the same steadiness. Fast forward to modern labs, and researchers find identical patterns. Regular physical exertion doesn't just change your biceps, it remodels your brain. Aerobic exercise boosts the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making and emotional control. Strength training increases stress resilience. Even posture alters hormone levels. Standing tall literally elevates testosterone and reduces cortisol. The Stoics didn't have fMRI machines, but they grasped the principle. A disciplined body cultivates a disciplined mind. So where does this leave us? You don't need to march barefoot through snow unless you want to, but you might consider this. How often do you let physical discomfort dictate your choices? That midday slump convincing you to skip the workout, the cozy bed arguing against the morning run, the couch negotiating for just one more episode. Each time you override those whispers of ease, you're not just burning calories, you're forging willpower that spills into every domain of life. Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial luxuries, trained in wrestling and wore simple tunics to avoid becoming soft. He knew comfort was a slippery slope. The more you indulge it, the more it demands. Here's the experiment. Pick one daily movement habit that gently challenges you. Maybe it's 5 minutes of stretching before checking your phone in the morning. A walk during lunch instead of scrolling. 10 push-ups every time you finish a work task. The form doesn't matter, the consistency does. Like Cotto layering stone after stone to build resilience, these small acts accumulate into mental fortitude. Notice how a brisk walk dissolves mental fog, or how holding a plank forces focus away from petty worries. The body becomes a lever for the mind, a tool to pry yourself free from distraction and passivity. Now turn the question inward. How does your physical state color your thoughts? When you're exhausted, don't minor irritations feel catastrophic. When you're energized, don't challenges seem more manageable? The Stoics would nod knowingly. They treated the body not as a separate entity, but as the mind's first classroom, a place to practice endurance, patience, and presence. Because here's the truth hiding in plain sight. You can't think clearly when your body's screaming for sugar, slouching in stagnation, or drowning in stress hormones. But when you move with intention, you don't just change how you feel, you change how you see. The world looks different to a body that's alive, awake, and ready. And in that aliveness, you'll find something remarkable. The strength to meet life's chaos, not with frazzled reaction, but with steady, stoic resolve. Epictetus, the former slave turned stoic teacher, had a name for those walking the path of wisdom, prokopton, meaning one who is progressing. Not a sage, not a master, but someone taking deliberate steps forward. He compared it to climbing a mountain. You don't curse yourself for not already being at the summit. You focus on the next foothold. That's the heart of the Stoic learner's journey: progress over perfection, motion over mastery. Imagine a musician practicing scales. They don't berate themselves for missing a note. They play it again, slower, until their fingers learn the rhythm. Stoicism works the same way. Every moment of awareness, every small choice to respond rather than react, is another step up the mountain. What makes the prokopton different from someone chasing quick fixes or instant enlightenment? It's the willingness to embrace the messy middle. Most people want to jump from novice to expert overnight, skipping the stumbles and frustrations. But Epictetus warned his students, no great thing is created suddenly. A diamond forms under pressure over millennia. A seedling doesn't become a towering oak in a week. Why should wisdom be any different? The path isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about learning to see them as part of the terrain. When you snap at a loved one, that's data, not failure. When anxiety hijacks your morning, that's the next note to practice. Here's where modern hustle culture gets stoicism wrong. Instagram posts shout about mastering your mind in 30 days. But real growth happens in the quiet, unglamorous moments, choosing patience in traffic, journaling after a hard day, or biting back a cutting remark. Epictetus put it bluntly: first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Identity isn't claimed, it's constructed through daily action. You don't become disciplined by reading books about discipline. You become disciplined by making your bed when you'd rather leave it tangled, by shutting off the alarm instead of hitting snooze, by speaking truth when silence would be easier. So what does the first step look like? Epictetus gave a deceptively simple answer: begin, not with grand gestures, but with the smallest, most immediate thing within your control. Maybe it's pausing for 3 breaths before answering an email that triggers you. Maybe it's writing 1 sentence in a gratitude journal before bed. The scale doesn't matter, the consistency does. Think of it like building a fire. A single spark won't create warmth, but nurture it with steady fuel, and soon you've got a blaze that can outlast any storm. Here's the invitation. What's one small Stoic step you can take today? Not a life overhaul, not a dramatic vow, just a single, deliberate choice aligned with the person you're becoming. It could be as simple as reframing a frustration: this traffic is my chance to practice patience, or as tangible as deleting a toxic app before bedtime. The Procopton knows something the perfectionist forgets. The mountain is climbed 1 step at a time, and the view from each new ledge makes the effort worth it. So lace up your boots. The path isn't waiting for you to be ready, it's waiting for you to begin. We've traveled a long road together through Stoic detachment, from mastering the dichotomy of control to embracing amor fati, from the clarity of journaling to the discipline of voluntary discomfort. Each of these practices shares a common thread. They aren't about shutting down your emotions, but about rising above their chaos to reclaim your agency. Detachment, in the Stoic sense, doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop being controlled by what you care about. Think of it like this: a ship's anchor isn't indifferent to the sea. It simply knows how to hold firm amidst the waves. Let's revisit the 3 pillars that can transform your relationship with life's turbulence. First, control the art of distinguishing between what's yours to command and what isn't. The traffic jam, the rude comment, the unexpected setback, these are beyond your power, but your interpretation, your effort, your next move, those are yours entirely. Second, amor fati, the radical acceptance of fate. Every obstacle isn't just something to endure, it's raw material for growth. That cancelled plan, that missed opportunity, even that heartbreak, each carries a lesson waiting to be unwrapped. And finally, journaling, the Stoic mirror that reflects your progress. Like Marcus Aurelius scribbling by candlelight, you don't need eloquence, you need honesty. A few sentences at night to ask: where did I act with courage? Where did fear steer me off course? Seneca once said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." That's the essence of Stoicism. It's not about waiting for life to get easier. It's about preparing yourself to meet it with steadier hands. The practices we've explored aren't just philosophy, they're drills for the soul. And like any training, their power lies in repetition. So here's your challenge. Pick 1 principle to apply this week. Maybe it's pausing before reacting to a trigger, or journaling each night to unpack your day. Perhaps it's catching yourself when you rant about unfairness and asking instead, how could this be serving me? Small steps consistently taken build unshakable resilience. As we wrap up, remember this: Stoic detachment isn't a retreat from life, it's a deeper engagement with it. By releasing your grip on the uncontrollable, you free up energy to invest in what truly matters. The chaos around you doesn't vanish, but your capacity to navigate it expands. And that's where real freedom lies, not in changing the world, but in mastering your inner landscape. If these ideas resonated with you, consider subscribing. We'll keep exploring timeless Stoic wisdom, practical tools for modern challenges, because the journey doesn't end here. Every day is another chance to practice, to stumble, to rise stronger. And as Seneca would remind us, the path to wisdom isn't crowded, but it's always open to those who choose to walk it. See you on